to 49, 7 and 8 to 56, 7, 9 to 63.
You're looking at, but not listening to, Gary Maloney, who in 1994 made a Hi-8 video called Palin Creek, A Changing Community. It's now part of the collection of the State Library of Queensland, who digitized it and made it available online, where I found it in 2019. This was the first video Maloney made, a documentary about his hometown about an hour and a half southwest of Brisbane. Palin Creek had been several things in the past, including, in Maloney's childhood, a dairy farm region, but by the 1990s that had changed. Maloney made this video to capture what was gone, or at least to capture the empty space where it had been. In doing so, he let the camera run for long shots, longer than most filmmakers would, watching and listening without comment. As an academic listener to archival sounds, this was an unusual chance for me to listen to the past, and through that past, to listen to another, more distant past. The video you're watching, and listening to, is the process of that listening. We all know what the past sounds like. It sounds like this. Sounds that were made in the past no longer exist. Some of them are recorded and can be reproduced. The primary result is new sounds that mimic the original sound to some degree of faithfulness. The other result is that we are very used to the sound that recording technology makes. Our personal memories of the past are caught up with the sound of the machines with which we listen to them. These become not the sound of the past, but the sound that memory makes. This sound might or might not have been Foleyed. If it is, it's one of 3 instances of Foleyed sounds in Palin Creek. The other 2 are not the sound of memory, but sounds that are now inaccessible to Maloney. For instance, here again is the sound of the one-room Palin Creek schoolhouse where Maloney went as a child.
7 to 49, 7 and 8 to 56, 7, 9 to 63.
The schoolhouse was torn down decades before Maloney made this video, so this is Maloney filling the hole where it had been with the sounds of a generic narrative. This is not that bell, these are not those children, these are sound effects. Narrative film has of course strongly affected what we know about sounds. We have certain expectations for the sounds of everything from gunshots to conversation to wind. This makes it easy to rekey affect by recreating these narrative conventions in sound design. It also makes it easy to overlook the opacity, to all but the individual listener, of the original sound. Here's another way to listen to the vanished Palin Creek School. John Rigby, a Queensland artist who spent part of his childhood there, reminisces about walking to school.
But I retraced my steps there recently and tried to find the school, which has been demolished quite some years now, and try to find where the mill was and then where the school was and just how far I did walk. And it was quite a distance for little legs. And I can remember the teacher going by on a horse in leather leggings and with her, rapping us. So, come on, John, get a move on, while she cantered off into the distance,
A sound of Queensland rural school days is recorded and reproduced here, not mechanically, but in Rigby's performance. He imitates his teacher, making a mundane daily noise that has now completely vanished from our experience. When I first found this oral history, while researching Palin Creek, it struck me that Rigby's laugh is catalogued as an event, but his performed sound was not. It seemed to me that the opposite is true. Rigby's performance is a narrative act of listening that asks me to listen to what he heard in that moment. He isn't describing, but remembering. That is the sonic difference that makes me, a listener who has never heard the original, understand the sound. Sound is a powerful affective trigger for memory, but on the individual level. On the level of history, sound is public memory. Sound only retains affect not through reproduction, but through narrative context. We hear a sound in part by being told of its affect on the original listener. In the case of Palin Creek, Maloney spends the documentary telling us about the town and the region, giving us a key to the sounds of the place that might unlock not just their meaning, This is not just the sound of a red cedar, but the sound of the absence of all the other red cedars. Forested hills have a very different sound and a different affect of place than hills covered mostly by grass. But of course we can't hear that absence except through the testimony of someone who knows that the absence is there. Where this differs from visual history is in the deep affect of sound for the individual who has heard it, and the generality of sound for those who have not. A sound is recognizable to the degree that it has been heard before by the listener. If it has not, it is inseparable in affect from the class of sounds to which it belongs. If we like, and I do, we can take this to absurd levels. This is the sound of a man drinking from a creek with a very high salt content, too high to allow for much irrigation. Or, in my favorite example, this is the sound, 1 second long, of a man holding a baby pig outside a dairy. All sounds, being the product of specific bodies together in a single space, are unique. Therefore, this moment of silence is different from all other silences. But that difference isn't apparent to anyone who hasn't heard that silence, even perhaps to those who have, given the technical limitations of recording technology. A knowledgeable listener might hear the rustling of pigs' bodies and the hum of dairy machinery that was not in fact there in that moment, or that was excised from the recording by a directional microphone. How we hear, the quality of the sound, resides not in the sound itself, but in the testimony of the listener.
Yes.